Today I'll share with you how I track my time spent for my author business and how I spent my time for Q1 2022. Hi there, my name is Tanya and welcome to my writing realm where I am working hard to improve my skills as a writer and self-published author, and I'm sharing with you what I learn along the way. If you're interested in finding a comfortable environment for some friendly writing chat, very relaxed, feel free to join my Facebook group called Tanya's Writing Realm. So in the past, I have watched other YouTubers talk about how they track their time as writers and authors. And I tried it a couple of times, but honestly, it added some unnecessary anxiety. And I couldn't really understand why. It was more about, okay, I'm starting this, type in my start time, type in my end time to give me an end time, and I just felt like it was too much. However, recently I've developed a way to track my time in Excel and present it in a fun way to make it more exciting, and it's working. So first I'm going to show you the workbook and show you how I'm tracking my time and what that time actually was for Q1. And then I am going to go into a little bit more detail how I set it up, what formulas I used, and just in case you would like to try it out yourself. Okay, so here it is on my screen. This is a fun little pie chart that I made. So let's start with the top. The largest number is 22%, and this is my education. Again, this is for Q1, so it is for the first 3 months of 2022. I spent almost 13 hours educating myself. Now, what does that include? Well, it includes actually reading a textbook, studying, doing the exercises. It includes listening to educational podcasts. I consider a lot of writing podcasts and author business podcasts educational because I always learn something. So my husband pointed out that I should also be tracking that as education because I am spending my time listening to it. In some cases, it may include watching YouTube videos, although for Q1, I didn't really include that very much in the education because a lot of it was, watching writers' blogs and so on, or video logs. So I did not include that as education. Okay, so the second one, 20%, is meetings, which was almost 12 hours doing meetings. Now, every Saturday I get together on Skype with a couple of writing friends, a script writer and another self-published author, and we talk about writing related and non-writing related stuff, mostly about where we're at, what we want to do. We ask each other for advice on how to handle certain business aspects of the writing process. Yes, so obviously I spend a lot of time. Sometimes the meetings can run anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. Really depends for me on how I'm feeling. So sometimes I have to duck out a little bit earlier because it is very stimulating, and my neurological condition, it just doesn't help. All right, let's move on. The next one, 18%. 10 hours, 10 and a half hours on YouTube. This is including planning, recording, editing, and uploading YouTube videos. This also feeds my Rumble channel. I have an account on Rumble now, but it's linked to my YouTube, so all the videos that I upload to YouTube automatically go into the Rumble account. So it's feeding two platforms, basically. All right, so what is next? Next, it is this one here, 14%. I only spent a total of 8 hours over the course of 3 months writing, now this was a learning experience for me. I didn't realize, I knew I wasn't writing enough, but to see it only being 8 hours opposed to, 13 hours on education and 12 hours on meetings and 10 and a half hours on YouTube, I'm spending way too little time on writing. And this is what has fed my self-change, I guess you could say, for Q2. And I'm trying to lean into the writing aspect of things as well. All right, so from 14%, we go down to 10%. Now, 10% is author business. that could be a variety of things like doing my media posts, following up on my publications, checking my sales, documenting income and expenses, anything author business related. So I've only spent just under 6 hours or 10% of my time doing author business related tasks. All right, so that brings us down to this one here. 6% of my time, only just over 3 hours on Fiverr. So on Fiverr, I have a beta reading gig, which now has 3 tiers. If you're interested in checking that out, the information will be in the description below. And I also started a peer editing. Now I'm not, a certified editor, so I did add a peer editing option on my beta reading, or next to my beta reading gig on Fiverr. And of course I haven't gotten any interest in that yet. But I think most people look for officially licensed or certified editors on Fiverr. So I am just not that. All right, 5% of the time is publishing. So this is actually going through and uploading a publication. It includes getting the barcode set up, formatting things properly, and uploading it to the platform. Now I only, of course, publish one or two things, I can't remember. So I've only spent just under 3 hours on publishing in Q1. All right, so up to 3%. 3% of the time is creating and publishing low content books. I believe it's just creating the low content. So the low content books, this is like lined notebooks or, special notebooks like the video content creators notebook, things like that. I don't intend to spend a ton of time on it, and honestly, so far in Q2, I haven't spent any time on it. This was only one book that I created for Mother's Day, which was a lined notebook with a background of tulips, colored images of tulips behind every lined page. It was really fun to create. I ordered one and sent it out to my mother, and she really loved it. All right, so down to the 2%. This is my podcast. I only spent 1.5 hours in a 3-month window on planning and recording, editing, and uploading my podcast. This is one of the reasons why I love doing the podcast. My podcast is a bi-weekly episode session, or whatever you want to call it, and it uploads automatically to YouTube, which saves me a ton of time creating that one video. So it's very fast and easy for me. I use Podbean. I love Podbean. I'm not affiliated, but I'm really happy with using them. Now, the 0% is editing. I didn't spend any time editing anything because I didn't have anything ready for publication, because again, I've shifted my focus to mainly education. Yes. All right. So that pretty much adds up to, let's just scroll over here, a total of 58.6 hours spent on my writing and author business. And that includes, again, the author business, which is, all of the business aspects of being an author, self-educating myself, Fiverr, which is intended for an additional income stream to support my author business, my writing podcast, publishing, like the actual act of publishing the books, my writing time that I need to work on, recording, editing, uploading YouTube videos, writing meetings, editing books, and creating low content books as, again, another side source of passive income to support my author business. All right, so let's go over how I set up these sheets. Now, my intention, of course, is to have one sheet for each quarter, quarter 1, quarter 2, and so on. And at the end, I am going to add an additional spreadsheet or an additional sheet to add all of it together so I can see my entire year at one glance. Okay, so I have added in here the column headings, date, action, category, total time. I go and highlight a section quite a ways down, and I go up here under the Home tab, under the Font section, and I use the drop-down arrow to find the All Borders, okay? And that's how I create the lines around this section of data. And then of course you can play with the formatting for your date. Now normally if you just type in, for example, today is April 22nd, it will automatically defer back to this date formula because Excel is pretty smart. So for each entry I'd enter the date, what I'm actually working on, because for example if I want to know how much time I'm spending on my story 300 Man, then I can always filter on this later on and look at exactly how much time I spent writing a specific story. Now for the categories, I decided to go with, static category names, which I'll explain once we get to the formula aspect of things. This is everything that I wanted to track in my author business time spent. So now once you have some data going in here, I had to enter a sum formula. Now this is called a sum if formula. So it's basically going to take anything that you enter in here that has this specific name in it, like here and here, and it is going to add it together. So to enter this formula, I'm just going to clear this formula and type it in so you can see how I've entered it. So the first thing that I do is I enter equals sum if, and then I hit tab, which automatically adds an open bracket, okay? Now the range is going to be where you're going to look up this specific word. So what I do is I click on the very first cell below the category heading, and then on my keyboard I hit Control, Shift, and down. Now of course I'm going to be adding more data below, and I'll show you how to edit this range easily without having to drag it down after the fact. Now we're going to enter a comma. The criteria is going to be the name that we're going to look for in that section of data, which for me is going to be the word author business. Now I'm going to hit comma again, and the sum range is going to be the range of cells that I would like to add together based on the word author business. Okay, so I'm going to click on the cell, and again I'm going to do Control, Shift, and down. Now this works for me right now because I have data there. When you don't have any information there, if you hit down, it's going to take you down to the bottom of the entire sheet, which you really don't need. Okay, so now I'm going to close the bracket and hit enter, and the formula is now there. To be able to copy this formula down, we need to set up these ranges so that they do not move, they do not change, because if I just copied this down by dragging this cursor down, it is going to continually change the range of the formula. See, this one says D5 to D72, this one says now D6 to D73, so it's going to start looking on the row below the row that we want to use. So we're going to go in here and we are going to add $signs. Now what the $signs do is tell Excel that when I copy this formula, I do not want the range to change in any way. So what I do is I hit F4 one time so that the $sign shows before the column and the row number. Okay, so now I'm going to add it to this one. Now this is the end of the range that we are summing the data in. Now the thing is, we need to increase this range because we're going to be adding a lot of data. So for the moment, I'm going to change it to 500. Now if I scroll down here, you're going to see that it's highlighted much further down all the way to row 500. You don't really need to go to the end of the sheet. Now for G5, we do not want to add the $signs because we want this to move as we copy the formula down, which I'll explain further as we go. Alright, so this range, same thing. F4 will add the $sign so that that range does not move, but the end of this range needs to be the exact same as this one so that the formula is going to sum the correct range of data. And enter. Alright, so now there's two things we can do. We can hit Control C and then highlight this section here and hit Control V to paste the formula. We could, I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Or we could hover over this bottom right hand corner of the cell and we can drag it down. Or the faster way of doing this is if you wait until this is a plus sign, you can also double left click for it to automatically copy the formulas down. Okay? Now, to set up this chart, what you would do is you highlight this section here, then you go to the Insert tab, and we want to change this to a specific chart, okay? So if you want to do a pie chart, you go over here to the chart section, and you click on this little arrow here, and you can pick a chart type. All right, so now you see I've got this little chart here. You can make this bigger. You can change the formatting. You want data labels, you can add data labels. You can change how the data labels show up, where you want it to sit. You can also change the style and the color. I liked the dark one. I have a hard time looking at too much bright information. But yeah, you can play around with these options here to pick out which kind of chart you want. You can also move it to a separate sheet. Yeah, and you can change the title. You can move the title, whatever you'd like to do. Now, if you wanted to show other charts, you can also go to Suggested. So Insert, Recommended Charts, and you can see other options to see how much time you spent. So if we wanted to do like a line chart, or this one, whatever, you can see the data represented in a different way. So it's however you want to see the information. Oops. This is another way to represent the highest area that you're spending your time in. So that for me it was education for Q1, the second was meetings, the third was YouTube, the fourth was writing, and so on. So it's about what makes sense to you. I like looking at the pie chart because it's, well, it looks pretty cool. So if we look at Q2, so far you can see that I have spent much more time on education just in the month of April. And also I've spent more time writing than I did in the first month of Q1. So this looks a lot better to me. I think that's one of the benefits to looking at how you spend your time is if you want to make changes or you need some encouragement to make some changes, this can really go a long way to helping encourage yourself to make those changes. So I hope that this was helpful or useful to you in some way. If you have any questions about setting this up, or if you have any suggestions on how to track your own time, please leave a comment below. I hope you have a great rest of your day, afternoon, evening, night, or whatever, and keep writing.